agus maire discussion on doing the right to the Kate piece Ganoella. We now move to take leaders' questions. Minister McConnell, you doing leaders' questions? Yes, very good. So we're taking leaders' questions under Standing Order 36, and I call Deputy Pearse Doherty, please.
Agus chean cóirle buid níos móna 100 míle poiste bunscoile gan conne scag hasla fiaclacha in Erin. Agus tá sé salir ón feimman a sláinte gur hála seo mar jalar an náhfuil an feimman sláinte ebalta níos mó bol fórne fiaclaachta pobli a arcu mar jalar an casc arciachta atá bhaimig an rialtas agus mar jal ar mí wanasiachta ar servití sláinte agus gan doubt a níos fear tiltte ag ar poiste. Taoiseach and Minister, more than 100,000 primary school children went without a dental screening appointment last year. 100,000, Minister. And that's according to the Irish Dental Association's analysis of the HSE data. More than 200,000 children were eligible for a school dental screening appointment with a public dentist, but only half of them received one. Half of them were left without what they were entitled to. Children should be seen at 2nd, 4th and 6th class, because these are the years that correspond with dental milestones. And screening at this point is essential. It is necessary to identify early signs of disease or a need for more serious orthodontic intervention. Delays in these assessments reduce the chance of preventative measures when the disease is not caught early. Without preventative care, children face poor oral health. In a reply that we received from my colleague David Culnan, the HSE corresponded with him and expressed concern at the extent of the backlog in preventative intervention and treatment, which the Public Health Service has not been able to manage. The HSE has been clear about why this happened, Minister. They stated very clearly that the ability to offer services to each of the school years has been limited due to the availability of dental staff. No surprises there. But the Irish Dental Association has said that compared to 15 years ago, there are 74 less public dentists, a drop of 23%. The burden of miscare falls disproportionately on lower income households, on rural and urban communities. At the same time, the collapse of the school screening programme, the number of dentists providing care to medical card holders has also collapsed. In 2016, Minister, 8 years ago, there were 1,600 dentists on that scheme. Now there are only 800, and every year the numbers have declined. That means that if these children's parents don't have deep pockets, they can't afford private healthcare, ranging from hundreds to thousands of euros for fillings, crowns and implants, these children face dental decay, poor oral health and even tooth loss. And these children are more likely to suffer pain, to miss school, and it impacts on their education and also on their social life. The Irish Dental Association have estimated a dentist shortage of about 500 across the public and private systems. So when asked about plans the HSE had to hire more public dentists, the response was devastating. And let me read what the HSE said to my colleague David Culnan. They said the embargo does not allow us currently to appoint any dental staff, not at consultant level. While the embargo is in place, no additional staff will be appointed. And that's the nub of the problem. Your government is preventing our health service to recruit staff to treat our children while 1 in 2 of them go without what they are entitled to. The HSE can't recruit public dental staff because of your government decision, other than consultants, because of a government recruitment embargo still in place today. So the government is driving the privatisation of basic dental services despite the fact that the vast majority of private dentists actually strongly support this essential service, particularly for children at school. It's one of the most basic forms of cost-effective preventative health care. And the government is punishing ordinary families who can't afford private health care for the government's own incompetence and mismanagement of the health budget. So can I say to you that our children deserve better? Can I say to you that they do not deserve to be waiting and waiting? Access to care needs to be on the basis of need, not on the ability to pay. So can I ask you, will the government now finally lift your ludicrous recruitment embargo and launch a serious catch-up programme for these children? And please tell us, what are your plans to recruit more dentists in the system and train more?
Thanks for raising this, Deputy Doherty, and it is a really important service and a really important issue, because it's important that we get that dental service that children need at a young age, and that's why it is in the school system. It's also a key priority for the government. We've been investing over €200 million annually in the provision of oral health care, targeting those, particularly those most in need in terms of support to access that care. This includes, really importantly, and particular to the issue you're raising today, an additional €15 million in core funding since 2019-2020 to support the National Oral Health Policy, Smile Agus Sláinte, and particularly an additional €17 million in one-off funding to address service backlogs. The HSE is progressing the development of oral health care packages for children aged from birth to 7 years of age. And that has been supported by an additional funding package in the most recent budget of €4.75 million to support the development of that particular service. And we're also seeing additional investment being provided to target orthodontic waiting lists, prioritising those who have been waiting the longest to access treatment. So in 2023, Deputy Doherty, we would have had over 2,000 patients removed from the HSE's orthodontic treatment waiting list through that particular funding. And there has been a decrease of 47% in the number of patients waiting to commence orthodontic treatment between the end of March 2020 and the end of June last year. In addition, then as well, we've seen a new orthodontic, which is jaw surgery waiting list initiative, commence in September last year, providing complex surgeries as well to patients which require lengthy hospital stays. And then in addition, Deputy Doherty, a further €3.35 million being invested this year on a one-off basis to support the continuation of measures to reduce orthodontic waiting lists, and particularly prioritising those who have a need. We absolutely accept, Deputy Doherty, the importance of dental services to young people, particularly those who are of school age, the early advice intervention in relation to good oral care, but particularly treatments where they're necessary. We accept the pressures that are on the system. As a government, we are significantly increasing the funding to help to address that. And I know it's something that Minister Donnelly is particularly focused on, and we will continue that work because we want to see a situation where, in terms of those two bi-yearly assessments that young children are getting when they're going through primary school, it's really important that we ensure that the resources are in place, that they get them when they need them, because it certainly prevents a lot of challenges down the line and ensures that children get the treatment at a time where they need it. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Doherty.
The one thing I can agree with you, Minister, is there is serious pressure on the system. But where we differ is you're putting the pressure on the system. Your clinical need is telling us, in correspondence that we have from the HSE, that it is a government decision that is preventing these children from being treated. We have a serious problem. 1 in 2 children who are entitled to these appointments are not getting them. 100,000 young children. We all know the impact of delayed diagnosis, delayed treatment, and the impact that can have on the child, on oral health, but also on self-confidence and all of the issues relating around that. The HSE couldn't be clearer. The recruitment embargo, the Taoiseach stood in that chair yesterday and said there is no recruitment embargo. The HSE are telling us the recruitment embargo is still in place at this point. While the embargo is in place, no additional staff will be appointed. So I put it to you again. There's 100 children that are being failed by your government, by a government decision to implement a recruitment embargo that makes sure that there will be no additional dental staff employed outside of a consultant. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do about it? Because we have told you what needs to be done. You need to lift the ludicrous recruitment embargo that is failing our children so badly, and you need to train more dentists.
Minister McConnell, please.
No, we are recruiting staff, Deputy Doherty. Obviously, we have to work within the budgetary envelope that is provided. But we have employed record staff across the health service over the course of this government. Over the course of this government, we've seen some 28,000 across the health service additional staff hired. There is a particular importance in relation to making sure that we resource and we provide services across dental services. We absolutely accept the importance of early intervention. We absolutely do. And as I've outlined in the earlier part of my response there, we're putting additional funding in as well to address backlogs that are there, because we want to see those backlogs addressed and that service increase. Across the board, Deputy Doherty, across the board, we have seen we have seen the most significant, a 50% increase in funding for the health service generally.
Would you stop heckling,
over the
please?
last 5 years, 4 to 5 years under this particular government, because we really do want to ensure that the health service is as strong as it possibly is. And likewise, in relation to the dental health care services, we're putting additional investment in now. There were some 900 additional staff employed across it as recently as last December to bring new staff into that as well to increase that service further.
Deputy Bacik, please.
Margaret Can Corla. Ara is a cursi tihiachta priafib natira sha. Is gaduan tihivaha fries re shunta a saloher dogachdina. Kaffer dera a her le droch policia on realtus sha. Minister, yesterday the government presented your quarterly Housing for All update, and the press conference appeared to be a smiley, happy occasion as always. But the reality of this housing disaster for people on the sharp edge of the crisis is not optimistic. The homelessness figures for March are due to be released tomorrow, and doubtless there's going to be more bad news. Those looking to avail of schemes such as tenant in situ, where they face eviction, are becoming mired in paperwork and inactivity from many local authorities. All of us are hearing this. I do appreciate some work is being done and that bodies like the Land Development Agency are being better capitalised. But those agencies are simply still not delivering on the homes that people need. And Minister, your government is not delivering the homes people need. Upon your lifting of the temporary eviction ban last year, a shameful decision, we heard a lot of promises and commitments about new measures to keep people in their homes. Lots of new policies, although they all fell short of a continued ban on no-fault evictions, that ban which should never have been lifted. But even still, the consolation prizes for people who are being deprived of security in their homes, those prizes have missed the mark. New laws promised to give statutory first refusal to tenants and local authorities where landlords decide to sell their properties. Those new laws have still not been brought in. And we had been led to believe that permanent schemes to help people facing eviction would be up and running by the start of this year. So more delays, and indeed delay and lack of ambition, have characterised the approach to housing from the department and from your government. The consequences are dire for so many. Just yesterday, the Irish Council for Social Housing warned us that older people and disabled people risk becoming an underclass, in their words, due to lack of appropriate social housing. Minister, we need more affordable homes. We need more social homes. We need greater ramping up of retrofitting. And Minister, you need to build. But under Housing for All, we will just not see the level of building that is needed because the plan is fundamentally flawed. And for months now, you've accepted your own targets are too low. We know that Housing for All, with those far too low targets, is incapable of delivering the homes that are needed. We're going to be waiting apparently till the autumn, though, before we see higher targets. And Minister, you wouldn't train for a marathon by setting the ceiling of your ambition at a 5k run. It's ridiculous to see such low targets continuing to remain in place when even the Taoiseach has admitted they're too low. None of us on the Labour benches believe in trickle-down politics, but the lack of urgency at the top of government is trickling down. It's slowing down construction across the country, it's slowing down responses from local authorities to those facing eviction, and it's meaning that so many people are still on the sharp end of this housing crisis. So, Minister, when will you accept that it's unacceptable to wait so long before we see publication of the higher targets? And when will you accept that there's simply far too little urgency or ambition on the delivery of homes, of housing and of homes for people who need it?
Minister McConnell.
Thanks for raising this, Deputy Bacik, because of course it is the most pressing issue facing this government, and it is the key #1 priority that this government has been working on to deliver. And we all only wish that it was as easy as setting a target and that then that would be delivered. And I note your recent conference. You were setting targets without any accompanying plan as to how they might be delivered. Certainly, we will continue as a government. We will continue as a government to assess evolving need in terms of the medium to long-term targets, and there will be a full assessment in relation to updating those targets. But what we are absolutely focusing on is increasing delivery and increasing capacity and making a real difference. And we are not in any way taking the foot anyway off full throttle in terms of the delivery as much as possibly can be done in relation to new housing supply. So while targets will adjust into the future, we are going as fast as we possibly can in relation to ramping up delivery. And you mentioned this morning the CSO dwellings completion for Q1 of 2024. And this reflects the fact that this government is making a real impact here in relation to increasing that delivery. The challenge, of course, is we would love to increase it faster, but we are delivering it as fast as we possibly can. And any interventions we can take to increase supply, we are. You'll have seen from the Q1 results this morning, which you referred to, that there were 5,841 new home completions in Q1 this year. And also we saw 33,000 new home completions in 2023. That was the highest in 15 years and exceeded the Housing for All strategy target of 29,000. So while the target for last year was 29,000, by pushing as hard as we possibly could, we hit 33,000 last year. The new commencements now this year are up significantly in what they would have been last year, and also we've seen the highest level of annual completion since we started keeping records in this regard in 2011, and that's a reflection of the effort and the momentum that the government are seeking to build here. Over the course of the 4 years of this government, we've seen 107,000 houses built now since 2020. Which is more than was built in the full 9 years before that. And then particularly as well through the social housing programme, where 12,000 new homes, over 12,000 new homes were actually built last year. The highest delivery in terms of social housing since the mid-1970s. Again, a reflection of how the government are putting every resource and taking every tool to the table here possible that can see delivery increase as quickly as possible and bring that supply into the system, which is what is going to deliver new homes for families and address the many challenges that are in the system.
Deputy Bacik.
Well, Minister, I'm glad you say housing is the key #1 priority of your government, but we're certainly not seeing that sense of ambition, that sense of urgency about that priority. We're not seeing that trickle down into government policies. And you can provide figures there, but the key figure of 4,000 children in homelessness remains a shameful stain on your government's record. And I'll repeat again, you have to set ambitious targets in order to speed up delivery of homes. That's as true in any sphere, in sporting, as I've said, as it is in housing construction, and every stakeholder in construction says that. You accuse us in Labour of not having a plan. We put forward a plan in a motion to this House in March of this year, a motion which your government did not even oppose, because you know that there must be more done to speed up delivery of homes. Over in the Shannon today, councillors from across different parties are debating and speaking, and they'll all be pointing out the lack of ambition, the lack of urgency at local level and at national level on the delivery of homes. We need to see more ambition and urgency from government, and it's not good enough to say that you're delaying the publication, the publication of the increased housing targets. You're delaying that till the autumn. When will they be published and why the delay?
Minister.
Deputy Bacik, I can assure you we are not delaying anything in terms of delivering and in terms of building new houses. Anything and everything the government. I've just outlined to you there how last year the target we had last year was 29,000 and how we exceeded that by reaching 33,000. We exceeded that by reaching 33,000. And our ambition this year is to exceed the targets that are in place this year again as well and leave no house that could be built unbuilt. We want to have as many built as possible. We want to see more homes as well as more homeowners as well, and more availability in the rental sector for those who rent. All of the issues, and particularly homelessness as well, all of the issues are going to be addressed by more supply. And this government has massively ramped up in every way possible that. And we've also brought to place then tools to support the development of houses and people actually to be able to purchase a home, for example, through the 30,000 euro that's available for someone to get a deposit under the First Home Scheme and the Help to Buy scheme, where we're helping homeowners with up to 30% shared ownership. And not also alongside that for derelict homes, the 70,000 euro grant we've brought in place as well to bring new supply in where homes have been out of circulation for the last number of years.
Thank you. Deputy Mick, please.
George Nkencho was shot dead by an armed Garda in his family's front garden on December the 30th, 2020. He was shot 5 times twice in the back. Yesterday, we learned that the Garda who shot him will not now stand trial. George's grieving mother, his sisters and brothers, a working-class migrant family, will now have to fight a long and hard battle for justice, even for basic information, like so many others have had to do in the past. On Tuesday, the state apologised to the Stardust families. The House rose in standing ovation, and everybody said, never again. Yet, just one day later, the state appears to many to be doing it all over again.
No, Deputy, now, hold on. We have, as a matter of long-established principle here, the separation of powers. Separation of powers means that in this House we do not criticise or comment on affairs before the courts. The Director of Public Prosecutions is independent in their remit, and their actions and decisions may not be commented on here in this House, in accordance with long-established tradition, which you're long enough here yourself to understand.
A member shall not be prevented from raising in the Dáil any matter of general public importance. It's matters of public importance I intend to raise here.
I'm sorry, you cannot comment, and I will not tolerate any member from any side before I'm told of what group you belong to. Nobody in this chamber is going to comment on actions or statements or decisions of the courts or of the DPP. Now let that be clear. Our hearts go out to the Nkencho family. The sympathies of every member of this House are with them and the memory of their son, who should not have lost his life. But we're not going to talk here about the decisions of the DPP. Let me be very clear about that.
This case was always going to be a litmus test for the state on how it treats the issue of race.
No, you can't. I'm sorry, Deputy. You may take another tack, but you are not going to engage in a debate here about a decision of the Director of Public Prosecutions. You're out of order in attempting to do so, and I will have to take action if you persist.
Minister, Ireland in 2024, Dublin in 2024, is not the land or the city of 100,000 welcomes for migrants and for people of colour. A racist riot shook the city last November. A migrant was killed some weeks ago for speaking his own language. What message does a decision to not even send this case for trial send?
No. You're not. Please, Deputy. We're not going to have more of this. Please desist. Please. Respect the honourable traditions of the House that has been respected over years by members on all sides. Do not try and take us down this road.
I'm stating a fact, Count Corley, when I say...
You can state any facts you like.
Count Corley...
Sorry. You can state any facts you like, but you're not going to come in here and abuse the long-established principle of separation of powers. You're not going to come in here and make statements about decisions of courts or decisions of the Director of Public Prosecutions. It's as simple as that. You can't have a set... No, you're not. You're not. You can't... Excuse me, Deputy. The rules of the House impact and apply to every one of the 160 members in the same way. There's no particular set of rules for you. Resume your seat, Deputy. You're out of order. Resume your seat. You're out of order. Resume your seat. You're out of order. Resume your seat. Resume your seat.
Standing order is clear, and I wish to have
resume your seat.
My points.
Resume your seat. Resume your seat. Resume your seat.
I will not resume my seat, Count Corley.
Right, the House is suspended. The House is suspended for 10 minutes. We'll resume. Minister, if you'd like to reply, the same protocols and procedures apply to you as apply to Deputy Barry. No, you can't. Well, you can if you... Yes, OK, I'll concede that, yes.
Okay. Well, after rowing with you, Count Corla, I want to agree with you that George Nkencho should not have been killed. I repeat, shot 5 times and twice in the back. His family, his grieving family, deserve answers on how their son was killed. I'd like to ask the Minister if he will agree that the GSOC report is a matter of great public importance about how Garda killings are investigated, about how people can get answers on what happened, and is a matter of real public importance about how mental health crises, which George Nkencho was going through, are dealt with by the state. And will you agree that that report should now be provided to the family and should be published?
Thank you, Deputy. Minister.
Thanks very much. I'll ask Cion Corla. And first of all, I would like to reiterate my deepest sympathies to the Nkencho family and all those impacted by this tragic death. Any fatal shooting is distressing and traumatic for those who witness it and for those who grieve the loss of the person who dies so suddenly. I know that the community have experienced trauma, and the family very much so, as a result of these events, and I know that for many people this development will be upsetting. Fatal shootings involving members of An Garda Síochána are very rare in Ireland, but all are independently investigated by GSOC when they do occur. This is the case with every incident involving the Gardaí that results in the death or serious harm of a person. I cannot and am not going to speak on behalf of the DPP, as the DPP is entirely independent in her role and in respect of whether a matter should be prosecuted or not. I understand that GSOC will be engaging with George's family further over the course of the coronial proceedings, which can now proceed. As there are statutory processes still live here, Cion Corla, I am restricted, as we all know, in what more I can say. But I would like to just again acknowledge that today will bring up very, very difficult memories, and my thoughts are with all those continuing to grieve George's loss.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy Barry.
Count Corla, I'd like to repeat my question to the Minister. There was a GSOC investigation. The investigation went on for 2.5 years. There were hundreds of witness statements. There was video evidence. There's a lot of stuff in that report. That report is today not available to the family. It's not available to the George's grieving mother, his brothers and his sisters. I believe that that report should be published, should be made available and made available to the family, and I ask where you stand on that. I will make the observation, and it is merely an observation, that the level of alienation among young people of colour in this state, from the state, is a matter that needs to be discussed and needs to be recognised. And I have no doubt that what happened yesterday will deepen and strengthen that alienation.
No, we're not.
That is something that must be debated and must be discussed.
Okay, Minister, please, if you conclude on this matter.
Yeah, thanks, Cion Corla. I believe GSOC has notified the Nkencho family of their entitlement under the Criminal Justice Victims of Crime Act 2017 to a summary of reasons from the DPP for its decision not to prosecute, as well as their statutory entitlement to request a review of the decision. I understand that GSOC will continue to engage with the Nkencho family in the context of coronial proceedings and any other statutory processes that may arise. GSOC has reiterated, Deputy, its undertaking to make the substantive detail of its investigation publicly available as and when other statutory processes permit it to do so.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Minister. Deputy Dr. Cathal, please.
Cion Corla, and good afternoon, Minister. Minister, I want to raise with you today the issue of supports for the farming community. As we know, we've had a pretty brutal winter, and even the last 6 to 7 months have been almost incessant rain. So a lot of supports are required for sure to help our farming community through this difficult patch, because it's really disrupted the normal farm routine For instance, we still have animals inside in sheds. We've salad units full of slurry. We've fertiliser that hasn't been spread. And we've crops that haven't been sown. I want to acknowledge the small progress that has occurred over the last few weeks, the additional supports from the state, particularly for the horticulture, the potato and the tillage sector. That is to be welcomed for sure. But the big takeaway from me, Minister, and I suspect for everybody inside in the chamber, is that the weather patterns are changing. And I know it's only the start of the Irish summer, but already we should have an eye towards the Irish winter in about 6 or 7 months' time as well. And the big issue for us, Minister, is cash flow. It's the lifeblood of any small business, any household, and any small farm as well, which are the original Irish SMEs. And just issues in relation to cash flow is the predictability of farm payments. And I know it's been mentioned to you before, and you've said that we are above average from an EU point of view, but if you take the analogy that a state employer, for instance, if a state employer isn't paying their PAYE workers at the appropriate regular time, it would be completely unacceptable. So to me, farmers should be treated exactly the same. There should be a zero tolerance for any kind of slippage from a payment point of view. So I suppose the question I have, Minister, is what is the reason for the slippage in payments? Is it that there isn't enough staff in the Department of Agriculture? Is there a problem with the IT system, or is it a combination of both? So the first one is just in relation to the schedule of payments. Secondly, in relation to labelling of payments. If you look at a normal farmer's bank statement, there's money coming in from the department, all right, for sure, and that's to be welcomed. But it's very, very hard to track what's that payment for. Is it for base? Is it for acres? Is it for TAMS? So we have traceability, and excellent traceability from a farm produce point of view. Perhaps we could have the same traceability from a farm payments point of view as well. And then finally, Minister, from a fodder support perspective, I think one of the reasons we muddled through the last few months is there was surplus silage and haylage here inside in the country because of very prudent planning over the last couple of years from a fodder support scheme. But that cushion has been completely exhausted now. It's completely depleted, and it needs to be replenished as soon as possible. So I guess my question to you, Minister, is are there plans for a new fodder support scheme for 2024? Because farmers are making plans for this summer on whether they're going to cut silage or not. We know from the last scheme last year, it was capped at €100 per hectare and capped at 10 hectares. If there is to be a scheme, would the Minister considering increasing that cap beyond 10 hectares to maybe 20 or 25? Thank you very much, Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for raising this issue, Deputy Berry, and it has certainly been a really challenging spring for all farming sectors. And that has come on the back of a very difficult autumn last year too, and we've just come out of one of the longest and most unprecedented wintering periods that we've seen in a long time, almost lasting 7 months from last September until now in many instances. And that's made it very difficult for livestock farmers in particular. And I know farmers have been very supportive of one another, and really importantly so in local communities and neighbourhoods, and that's been crucial because it can be quite solitary, particularly when you're handling all these pressures yourself within the farm gate. And I want to acknowledge the support that farmers have given one another, and indeed the challenging times they've gone through. As government, as a minister and as government, we have worked as well to try and support the sector to come through this particular period too. So I moved to pause all inspections, for example, so that farmers would be one less thing for farmers to have to be concerned about during the month of April, up to the 22nd of April. Also, I tasked Teagasc with the role of coordinating support and the linking of farmers who had availability of fodder to those that needed it. And I want to acknowledge as well the role of the Fodder and Food Security Committee under the chairmanship of Mike McGann, working closely with Frank O'Mara and Stan Lawler from Teagasc in relation to the support they give, working with all farm stakeholders through as well in terms of monitoring the situation as it went. I introduced then the last 2 or 3 weeks a transport subsidy to be able to move it from one part of the country to others where it was needed, and that was important. And then most recently, I've made a commitment to the tillage sector, and you've raised, and I know the tillage sector is particularly important in your own locality, of committing to €100 per hectare for all farmers who put seed in the soil for harvest 2024. Again, to help confidence for farmers, given the fact that there is a very narrow planting season and with higher risk to yields and profitability than at other times, to support them through that. You mentioned the importance of cash flow, Deputy Berry, and I agree. And have engaged with the banks in relation to that, and the banks have been very proactive in terms of asking customers to come to them where they are experiencing cash flow problems, and indeed in terms of putting facilities in place to provide support there too. And then also the certainty and predictability around payments, which I absolutely agree is really important. And we are, if not the best, one of the best performing countries within the EU in terms of delivering payments early and on time to farmers. Last year was the first year of a new common agricultural policy, and all of the schemes were new, so it is more complicated and more difficult to do in the first year of a new scheme as opposed to subsequent years where you're rerunning the schemes from the first year. And last year I would have set out payment schedules in March for the end of last year, giving farmers line of sight and predictability as to when they'd receive those payments. They were adjusted between 1 and 4 weeks from previous years to reflect the fact that there was extra work required to deliver on those dates. But we did deliver over 90% of payments on the dates we said we would, and that was important. And now next year, as we get into the second year of the scheme, those payments will return to normal dates, and again we will be very focused on delivering on those dates too.
Deputy Berry.
Thank you, Minister, for that response. And I do agree that postponing the audits and the inspections, even just for a few weeks, does take a lot of pressure off a lot of farmers. Just the last point, Minister, and I'm sure it's been mentioned to you as well, it's definitely been mentioned to me and Deputy Kenny, is the burden of administration on farmers. Again, they're professional farmers. I mean, that's what they love doing. We want them out in the fields, doing what they're good at. We don't want them at the kitchen table, filling up incessant forms and massive duplication. I think most people would accept the principle that we need to simplify and streamline the administrative burden on farmers. But there's about 10 months left in the natural life of this doll. Are there any specific measures that you're considering bringing in to reduce the burden of administration on our farmers, to make life easier for them and let them focus on the job that they're supposed to be doing? Thanks very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister.
Yeah, well, we have responded, Deputy Berry, to reflect the challenges that the inclement weather is having across various schemes to provide flexibilities over the course of the year in terms of dates and in terms of returns, for example. So in the acre scheme, for example, we've delayed some actions until the end of the year to provide space for farmers to be able to manage that. Also in relation to some of the tillage requirements that are in place, we've provided more flexibility around what crops farmers can plant this year and exemptions from the 3-crop rule, for example. Across the board, we work to try and make it as straightforward as we can. But the challenge is when you're working within a common policy that's across 27 member states and which has to have lots of commonalities across the EU and across that common market, it brings challenges. But we do work very hard to try and make it as straightforward as possible. But it's something we all have to work harder at, and particularly when it comes to the next CAP and as we formulate our priorities around that, to make sure that that becomes the case too. It is going to be important now that we support farmers to make fodder this year, to replenish stocks. I did have a fodder scheme last year, like we had support schemes for homeowners, for example, and families in relation to energy supports for farmers. But I'm applying those supports this year to the sectors that need it most, particularly the tillage sector, for example, which is under particular pressure, and also other supports this year too. Thank you.
That concludes Leaders' Questions. We move now to questions.